Alright, and welcome to angles formed by two vertices, level 4. Now, to start off example 1, it says find the measure of angle HFI, which we can see H to F to I, that's right there, given that angle HGI is 68, and once again we go H to G to I. Now, I want to start by highlighting what is the subtended arc that both of these vertices share. Well, it's going to be that arc HI. I also want to fill in the information I know that HGI, and let me go ahead and use a different color here. I use gold to represent this vertice outside, is 68 degrees. Also, let's go ahead and denote this vertice that is on, right there. We'll use two different colors for these two different vertices. Now, switching back to gold, I actually recognize an issue here. Now, normally, we would think of point G as a vertex outside. However, this is actually a special case. See, line GH only touches the circle in one point, and this means it is, in fact, a tangent. We also see the line segment GI touches in one point, so it too must be a tangent. Well, why is this important? What it means is that angle HGI plus arc HI must add up to 180 degrees. So this is kind of our special case when we have an angle formed by two tangents, which we see right there and right there. Well, this angle and this arc both have to add up to 180. Well, if I know the angle is 68, I can simply say, okay, well, the angle is 68 degrees plus arc HI equals 180. And of course, how do we get rid of a positive? Well, we're going to subtract. So let's subtract 68 from both sides. And we now have that arc HI is equal to, and just go ahead and grab your calculator, just so you don't make any silly mistakes. And it looks like 180 minus 68 will give us 112 degrees. Now, let me go ahead and write that in red because that is in fact our subtended arc, 112 degrees. And then, of course, this brings us to our vertex that we said was on the circle. So I simply want to write the formula for a vertex on the circle. The measure of angle 1 equals 1/2 arc x. At this point, we should be really familiar with this equation. And we see, hey, this right here is the curved portion of the circle. That must be our arc. So we'll say measure angle 1 is equal to 1/2 parentheses 112. And we know that whenever two things are side by side, they're simply being multiplied. And so the measure of angle 1 would equal 56 degrees if we did 112 times 1/2. All right. And that allows us to find that angle. Now, as always, I would have you pause the video right here. Go ahead and finish writing down any notes that you need. And, okay. Now, in example 2, it actually asks us to find the measure of angle JHI. Now, as in all of our previous examples, I want to first start by highlighting this subtended arc that we see both angles share. Okay, so I'm going to start by highlighting arc JI. Now, let's go ahead and switch to this gold color that I've been using. And we see initially we have this angle right here formed by that vertex. And then, of course, switching over to this pink, we also, magenta I suppose, we see we have this angle formed right over here. Now the question says find angle JHI. So if I were to start at J and go all the way to H and go all the way to I, well, I know, hey, this is what I'm ultimately searching for. And since I'm searching for that, it would appear that I'm actually going to need to start here. Now, if you were to think that, hey, K looks like a vertex that's outside the circle, well, you'd be absolutely correct. However, I want y'all to remember this is a special case. This is where we have an angle formed by tangents, okay? And if you will recall, when we have an angle formed by tangents, we know that that angle will always add up to 180 with its subtended arc. So let's go ahead and set that up. We can say, okay, well, this goes from I to K to J. So I can say, okay, angle I, K, J, plus, remember that subtended arc, JI, has to add up to 180 degrees. Now I know the angle that's given to me, that's going to be 48 degrees, plus, and then here we have, of course, arc JI, and that equals 180. Well, how do we get arc JI by itself? We see this positive 48, and remember, to get rid of a positive, of course, we're going to need to use a negative. So let's go ahead and subtract 48 from both sides, and so we get this. We get arc JI is equal to 180 minus 48, and while I think that's 132, I highly advise you use your calculator just to make sure you don't make any mistakes. And yes, 180 minus 48 will give us 132 degrees. Now, let me go ahead and switch back to that red because this is how I've initially put this arc. So we'll write 132 degrees right there. And from here, now I'm going to put my focus back on this angle JHI right over here. And we'd first ask ourselves, well, is this a vertex that is inside, on, or outside of the circle? Now I would go ahead and say this is a vertex that is outside. And the reason that's important is that tells us what formula we want to use. So let's go ahead and set that up. We know it's going to be the measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 parentheses arc X something arc Y. And ask yourself, and when it's a vertex outside, should we be adding or subtracting? And of course the answer is we should be subtracting. So let's fill in everything we know. We don't know the angle, that's what we're searching for. So I'll still write measure angle 1 equals 1/2 parentheses. And now we want to ask ourselves, well, what is arc X? Is arc X our large or small arc? And of course we know that to be our large arc. So we'll write 132 minus, and we know arc Y is the small arc, which would be 42. Now, in this case, because there's no variables on the right side, we're simply following our order of operations, and we just want to subtract first. So let's see, 132 minus 42 will of course give us 90 degrees. And if we'll recall, whenever two things are side by side, they're simply being multiplied. So we know that the measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 times 90, or aka 0.5 times 90 if you would like, and that will of course give us 45 degrees. Now let me go ahead and write that in. We know that that is 45 degrees, kind of right there. That's our answer. I hope that this helps, and well, I'll see you guys in our next video series.